Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 2 of our Sinclair Violet sew along. Today all we will do, because I want to have all of our focus on this, we will just be doing the ruching on the front panel. So take it slow, take it easy, don't rush. You have the whole day to do just this front panel. So before we go any further with the sewing and the pleating, we need to put the markings that we have from the pattern pieces to your actual piece. So today we'll be working with just the lining piece and the main piece. So let's start by putting the markings on the lining piece. This is bamboo, so I have a couple of marking tools here and to see which one works and which one stays visible. And what I did, I snipped the pattern piece where the markings are, and just use that as a guide to put my markings. Just remember that if you're marking with a friction pen like this one, this will disappear when ironed. So plan on ironing only at the end, or mark with a different marking object, because this will disappear on you and you don't want that. It looks like the red is visible, and it's marking on the back of bamboo. Okay, so you can see here the markings on this side. So now we're going to move on to the other side. And do the markings on the other lining. Same way, I'm just placing my pattern piece, and that's why I said for this pattern I just have, while I use a projector for everything else, just for marking purposes I like to have my my actual pattern piece. I find it easier, but you can definitely mark using your projector, don't get me wrong. It's just I like to make my life easier, and this is where it's at. Don't skip your markings. Okay. So we have both sides marked on the lining, and now let's put the many markings on the main. So on the right side of my cotton lycra, I'll do the same thing. Let me do this fold. I snipped the length of that marking with scissors, so one is longer, one is shorter. And I'm just folding that snipped part to guide me on for my markings. The friction pen may not work on this, so I might have to switch to a Taylor chalk. That's okay. Let me try the pen just in case. Yeah, I won't see it. So we'll just go chalk. White chalk on black fabric will be super visible. Again, be careful, this is going to be dusted off if you touch it a lot, because it is just chalk after all. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets of long and short markings. Can you see them here on the side? We're going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, and I will try not to wipe this side with my hand. Again, remember it's chalk, so it's easily wipeable. So avoid touching with your elbow this side. I find that this method is easier for me, but depending if you're right-handed, left-handed, you might have different methods that you like to use to add your markings, and that's okay too. Everything that I'm showing you right now is suggestions and how it works for me. So you can try it or you can use whatever you want. And if you have some crazy good tips for us, be sure to share them in the comments of the video or in the backstage backroom. We are all here to learn from each other. Okay, awesome. So my markings are done on both the lining and the main. What we will do next is grab a couple of clips and place your top lining and main right sides together. You're going to match those notches there and the sides. And we're going to stitch those down with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. The pattern does follow 1/4 of an inch seam allowance throughout. And we're also going to add elastic to the top, just to give it a little bit more structure. Elastic will be added as on a 1-to-1 ratio, not pulling on it, not stretching the elastic. So let's move on to the sewing machine and sew this top right here. Okay, we are at the sewing machine. I changed my needle to a ballpoint needle because I'm sewing knits on my machine. I put my thread in, grabbed the little bit of elastic that I have left. It is time to grab some elastic. And I'm going to sew this with a zigzag stitch at, let's do 2.5 length and about 4 width, and see how we like it. I'm just simply placing the elastic along the raw edge at the top where we pinned. I'm not pulling the elastic, I'm just holding it taut, but I am not stretching the elastic. It's just there to add extra stability so it doesn't make the top, you know, like droopy. You can do this step on a serger as well. Let's back stitch. If you give it a good press, you will remove the waviness. However, you'll also remove your marking. So let's hold off on pressing until we make our pleats, and then we'll press. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to do an understitching right now, which means, oops, I didn't catch it here. Not a problem, we can do that again. It's skipped here. So I'm going to go ahead, since the elastic is already stitched, I can just do a triple stretch stitch. With a quarter of an inch seam allowance. This will also reinforce my stitch. If you do a serger stitch, then you're good sewing just once. Okay, much better now. So we're going to understitch, which means we're going to stitch the seam allowance to the lining only. This way it's not going to peak at the top of the lining, at the top of the shirt. So I open it. This is the wrong side of your fabric, so I'm just, you can stitch from the wrong or the right, but either way you're going to stitch the seam allowance. So this part, it's going to go right here on, only on the lining. I could have done a zigzag stitch for this too. And because the zipper is, the elastic is now understitched to the lining, you won't feel it anyways. And it's sandwiched in between. See, it's right under here, so you won't feel it. It's in between the lining and the main. Okay, so you normally I would suggest you give this a good steam press. Again, my printed part is the lining and this is the outer, but now it won't peak. As you can see, it has this extra edge here that will stop it from picking up. So let's go ahead and pin our pleats in place and then we'll stitch them. Okay, we are back at the table. We have our main fabric with the right side up. You have a long marking and a short marking. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. This way I don't erase anything by mistakes with my fingers. So hopefully you can see it in one of the two angles that I have here. You're going to take your long pleat, long marking, and fold it over the short marking. And you're going to be doing this 14 times. So you're taking your long marking, fold it over your short marking. That's one pleat. And put a pin. Again, you have your long marking here, short marking right underneath it. You're going to take your long and your short and bring them together. And put a pin. You can put a clip too. I find it a little easier with pins on this step. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. Bring your long marking to the short marking and put a pin. Okay, so we have 3 pleats. We should have 7 on each side. Same thing. I have a long and a short. I bring them together like this, so they touch, and then fold. You want your pleat to go towards the bottom of the panel. So you want your pleats to go down, not up. Okay? So remember when you pin, for example here, I need to repin because it was going up. Make sure when you pin through all 3 layers of the pleat. Okay, so we're back to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring the top to the bottom and pleat. And you're going to stick a pin through all 3 layers. 2 more on this side. Bring the top, the long one, towards the bottom, the short one. Put them together. And put a pin through all 3 layers. It is rare that I use my magnetic tray, but I'm happy to see it now in use. I've DIY'd this one from a pass holder tray from Disney with magnets on the bottom. Just Scotch tape magnets on the bottom, and it doesn't fall. Anyways, I digress. So we're doing the same thing here. And there you go. So your pleats on one side are done. Okay, let's move on to the other side. And we're going to do the same thing. We take the long pleat, put it over the short one, long over the short, like so. And pin in place with the pleat down. This should be in the same location as the other side, but we will double check everything before we sew. Long line, short line, one on top of the other, and pleat down. Okay, long, short, and pleat down. One time I've done this, it doesn't apply to the sew along. So if you want to qualify for the sew along, you have to do your pleats. But if you want to do another violet and you want to do the lazy method with no pleats, what I've done at one point on one of my violets, I've actually gathered this side to match the lining, and I have a gathered front instead of a pleated front. And it's very beautiful. Like if you're in a time crunch and you don't want to spend the time to do your gathers, again, not for the sew along, but if you do another one, just do a gather stitch, 2 lines of stitching, gather it to the same length of the lining, and baste it in place. Again, the lazy method, but you won't get pleats, you will get gathers. Don't tell anyone I said that, okay? This stays between you and I. Okay, and we have 2 more left here. And there you go, last one. Again, long over short and pleat. Okay, so now you have all 14 pleats done. What you can do is create the actual pleat to see if they're parallels, or parallel first of all, if they're all matching on both sides. You're obviously going to poke yourself with some pins, but that's okay, just collateral damage. If maybe it's just me. Let's see if I fold them like they're supposed to. You can see the pleats. Okay. So now you can go ahead and give it a press if you want, or I'll show you a little trick. Maybe look at it from above to make sure it's not crooked in any way. It's not gonna be perfect, but I also don't want it to be like visibly crooked. Stuff shifts, it's normal that sometimes things happen, so that's why I'm adjusting everything before I stitch. Looks pretty good. Pretty parallel, and the pleats do show a lot better when it's a solid versus when it's a print. My pin fly off too. That's why I chose to do the solid on the front and then line it with bamboo. Look how beautiful it is, and this is just from a little bit of finger pressing. So what you can do right now, you can take this, oops, I think I put this crooked like this. You can take your panel as it is right now to your iron and give it a good press. Why am I doing this crooked? I'm trying to not get my hands in front of the camera, the top camera or the side camera. This is why I'm making it look a lot more complicated than it is. If you don't have to film this, you're good, don't worry about it. Okay, but double check everything before you stitch, that it looks nice and neat. Okay, you can use a little bit of double-sided tape, the water-soluble one, to hold your pleats in place. This will disappear once you wash the dress, or once you press it. This will disappear, but it will hold your pleats in place while you sew. So I put one there, and if I peel it off, this is the Wizardry water-soluble tape that I use for garments, not for bag making. So see, it holds my pleat in place. That's one trick that I have for you. And since it's water-soluble, I'm not worried about it staying there on my dress. It's going to disappear. So I just put it on this side of the pleat, peel it off, and pleat. You don't have to, obviously. This is if you need an extra helping hand before you stitch. You can also press this. I have this one a little short, so I'll put it on the bottom here. Again, this is optional, you don't have to do it. But I like to get to make my sewing life easier by using all the little gadgets and accessories that I have. And if this is making my life easier, why not? Okay, 2 more pleats. And then I'm done. One and the last one. Last step that we have to do today is stitch the pleats down and give it a good press. I've spared you from pressing throughout this time around so we don't lose our markings, but I will not let you not press at the end. So let's make sure we do that. Look how gorgeous these pleats are, and we haven't even sewn them yet. I just tuck them down with my hands. Aren't they just beautiful? So now, after we've made these gorgeous pleats, we're going to bring the lining, and it should all match. So place your lining, wrong sides together. Your see those markings that you have on the lining, remember the ones that we did at the beginning? This will be on the bottom of the pleat. They should match with the bottom of the pleat. So you can either repin everything in place, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put a few clips. There you go. So I don't lose my pins. Okay, I'm going to put a few clips to hold it in place while I take it to the sewing machine. And then we will stitch it down with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So if you look, the bottom of your pleat will match the marking. So this is the bottom of my pleat, and this is the marking. This should be matching everywhere. So see, this bottom of the pleat and this right here should be matching. See where the marking is right here? You see this red line? And the bottom of my pleat, those should be matching right now, if everything was done accordingly. If you didn't get it right the first time, you can just wiggle it around and take your time. That's why I saved a whole sewing day just for creating this beautiful panel, because the rest of the dress is relatively easy. And I just remember yesterday I forgot to cut my pockets. I will cut pockets too, because there is no dress with no pockets. We do want pockets on all the dresses, right? So we are done with the pinning. We're going to go ahead to the sewing machine and stitch along the side seams in preparation for creating the panel tomorrow. At the sewing machine, I'm going to stitch this down using just a regular straight stitch, because I'm basically basting it in place, so I don't care about the stretch on this, because I'm going to be serging it tomorrow when I create the bodies. So I'll just do a straight stitch. and remove the pins while I go. I am not a sew over pins kind of sewist. With my track record of injuries while I sew, I'm sure I'll get one of these in my cornea, and I don't want that. So I do remove my pins as I go. As you can see. Make sure that you sew through all the layers. And if you want, you can baste in place the bottom as well. Beautiful. I'm double checking that all the layers are there, because it's easier to miss layers when you have these gorgeous pleats. Okay, the panel is done. I'm going to go ahead and give it a good press, clean off the residue from the water-soluble double-sided tape, and snap a photo. This will disappear, don't worry about it. Snap a photo of your completed panel. This is my lining, this is the front, and post it in the day 2 photo of the Violet Sinclair Sew Along album. The Sew Along album is in the Backstage Backroom on Facebook, and I'll see you back here tomorrow when we'll be working on the actual bodies. Talk to you soon. Bye.